And good morning to our listeners as well.
This matter has been going on for nearly 3 years, since 2018. Has Mr. Chang been in custody this whole time?
Indeed, he has been in custody this whole time, and it's important for us to illustrate why it has gone on for such a long time. In that, when going through South Africa en route to Dubai, Mr. Chang was intercepted, and he was actually then brought into custody on the request of the USA. And subsequent to that, Mozambique then also filed an extradition request for Mr. Chang. The erstwhile minister then decided that after the extradition processes being adjudicated in our courts, decided that Mr. Chang is extraditable to Mozambique. Shortly after that, we had the national government elections, and we had a new minister, and Minister Lamola. And during that process, Mr. Chang then brought an application before the court requesting Minister Lamola to speed up his extradition to Mozambique. And in that process, upon studying the papers, Minister Lamola learned that actually the extradition request by Mozambique may not be valid, but he had to clarify this in the same application that was brought by Mr. Chang. And the court then actually did confirm that at the time at which the decision was made by the erstwhile minister, Minister Masuta, there was only one valid extradition on the table. As a result, the whole matter had to be remitted and started from afresh. And in that process, we then had to get representations and get a new extradition process underway. And several representations were made. But also in the process, we must also recall that the Mozambican government had actually sought to appeal the judgment of the High Court. So that in and of itself took quite a while. Only after several months down the line did the Mozambican government confirm that they're no longer appealing the judgment of the High Court. And as a result, the extradition processes could start afresh. So a number of activities have been taking place. But yes, in those processes, the individual concerned, the suspect, has been in custody in South Africa.
So following all of those activities, this new extradition process is taking him to Mozambique and not to the United States. What kind of conversations are you having with the US in this regard? Are all parties satisfied with the outcome?
Well, the whole process of extradition, Desiree, is to ensure that justice will be served. And in fact, when one looks at an extradition request, the critical question is whether the individual has been charged and whether they will face a prosecution process in the country where they are requested. And this was now evident in the case of Mozambique. They had charged him with several instances of money laundering, embezzlement, abuse of public office, the works. And we think that those are fair charges, and we looked at it. Indeed, it's an indictment that warrants prosecution in the country which they request. And indeed, we should be, who are we to say to Mozambique, you should not prosecute someone who you want to prosecute? South Africa may one day also request someone to be prosecuted from Mozambique, and we'll expect the same level of cooperation from them. We are also required to comply with this extradition process in terms of not only our constitution, but international law and multilateral treaty in the form of the SADC protocol on extradition. And so we are required to ensure that we enforce it. And in this regard, that was a critical factor that we had to look at to ensure that we enforce our multilateral treaties that are at play. And we also ensure that the countries which require justice in their jurisdictions are given an opportunity to effect that justice.
I hear what you're saying, Chrispin, but just for interest's sake, I want to know how you reached the decision of going for Mozambique as opposed to the US. Are you able to give us some of the details of why the US request wasn't granted?
Yes, like I said, one of the issues that we are looking at and what we rather looked at was the issue of enforcing a multilateral treaty here. The SADC protocol is something that is of major interest to us, and it is something that must be enforced across the region. Whereas with the other parties, we do have a bilateral treaty. So those are the factors that we took into consideration. The fact that he's been charged for embezzlement in an African state, and the African state wants to prosecute him using a regional protocol is quite important. And we, who are we to say that justice will not be done here or there? We need to ensure that we give the opportunity to people to prosecute the people for crimes that they believe they are prosecutable for.
It has been a long-running one in brought also not only the Justice Department into play, but also the Department of International Relations. But let's just move on to another legal matter in neighboring Botswana. The case of Velemina Maswabi, who was accused of being a co-conspirator in an alleged regime change plot, has been struck off the roll. Botswana had been frustrated with South Africa for allegedly not assisting in the prosecution of the case, which has linked local businesswoman Bridget Motsepe in it. What's the latest here?
We have noted that judgment by a high court in Botswana, and we have actually sought to rescind the judgment in the South African courts, where it was said that we are trying to hide information from the Botswana government. Now that the Botswana court has confirmed that this matter seems to be a fabrication, we will be seeking clarity from our sister nation. And particularly of concern is the fact that they sought to engage with us through a right-wing Afrikaner organization instead of going through the SADC protocol, or also going through the bilateral processes and diplomatic channels, is a matter of concern. And we have taken this up with our Botswana counterparts, and we hope to get a response from them. But safe to say, it's quite telling that this matter has been cleared, or has been cleared in the Botswana court. And most importantly, the accusations that were leveled towards us by AfriForum seem to be baseless. And we will be taking this up with our sister nation just to understand why they chose this route of engaging us through, like I've said, a right-wing Afrikaner organization instead of going through the normal protocols. We think that is quite a concerning feature in this case, and it's something that we will really seek clarity on with urgency from our sister nation.
All right, lastly, there's the outstanding matter and also a very massive social public interest of the extradition of charismatic church leader Chrispin Phiri from Malawi, and the Guptas being extradited from the UAE. Just give us updates here.
Yeah, I think both of these cases, and including the other two cases that we've just spoken about, illustrate the complexities of extradition processes in general. In the Malawi situation, we understand that the director of public prosecutions in Malawi has taken the matter on review because there was a decision that we may need to send over witnesses. The Malawian government does not seem to agree with that decision, and they are reviewing the matter. In the case of the Guptas in the UAE, as you would recall, we had confirmed that the extradition processes have begun, and we are in the process of waiting for feedback from Interpol on what the status of our red notice request is. There was a request from the parties concerned that we file further and better particulars to some extent. And so we are waiting feedback on how our further and better particulars fare, and we hope that we'll get that feedback soon. But what we can confirm in both instances is that the processes are definitely underway. But like we've seen, generally extradition is a convoluted and complicated process and doesn't happen at a click of a button.
We're time tight, but we'd like to have you back another time just to have a bigger conversation generally about extradition and how it's operated in not only in South Africa, of course, as you say, in the region as well, and of course in relation to global partners. But thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much.
Chrispin Phiri is the spokesperson for the Department of Justice.